Okay, good evening. It is April 22nd, 2023. Okay, so I haven't done a video in a few weeks. I just have been busy getting orders out from that show that I was at and the Conscious Life Expo in LA and different things. But I wanted to touch on some things because, so the last video, a couple of videos ago, I was touching on some of the train derailments happening in Ohio and various different places. And there has also been a train derailment that happened in Minnesota here. There in on March 30th, 2023, there was a train derailment that happened in Raymond, Minnesota. I am in the Minneapolis area right now, where I have been living. I'm kind of back and forth from Minneapolis and South Dakota. I will touch on that also, but it was a train derailment that was hauling ethanol. Okay, so now I haven't heard of one since. Now this is April now, but my understanding, what I think is going on with these train derailments that nobody is really touching on at all, because I don't really see any kind of environmental protection agency talking about what is going to happen in the future, what are the ramifications of any of these things. And I believe that the whole agenda was to poison the soil in things in the area. The toxic substances were to poison the soil or the farming communities in the area. Like in Ohio, it was like a huge Amish community of farming communities, in that particular area that got hit with that derailment that happened in Ohio. Okay, so I believe that what the deep state, these are deep state agendas. Okay, I have been talking about the deep state on my videos for years now. So I believe that what this agenda is that they are trying to target the food supply. That's my opinion, and that's what I've talked about with other people as well. And so if you have access to your own garden, or if you have stored food, that's a good idea. It's a good idea to have stored food. It's a good idea to have access to somewhere where you can have your own garden, because I believe they are targeting our food supply with these. I believe that is what the agenda is, because there's still toxins that are spilling into these areas, into the soils and things like that, and the water supply. So that's gonna poison the food and the water supply. Okay, so I believe that is what the agenda is. Okay, so just beware of that. And the other thing I wanted to touch on is that, well, after actually for quite a while here, there's been a lot more thefts of vehicles in the Minneapolis area and throughout the whole country. But there has been, see, what's going on is that there's a major shortage of chips. There's okay, so there is a chip shortage going on where the auto manufacturers don't have the chips from China to put in the new vehicles. So there's a shortage of new vehicles coming over to the United States right now. Okay, so what seems to be going on is that they're targeting. They seem to be trying to steal the older vehicles if they can. So I've had a couple. There's been a couple of people right in the Minneapolis area. One guy just stupid. He just went in and he left his car running, but just went in literally for like a minute to get coffee, and his car got stolen. Anytime, you have to understand, in Minneapolis, you go out and you start your car and you leave it running sometimes for a couple minutes, and there's been people that have gotten their car stolen that way. But you have to understand that they're not bringing a lot of new cars over, so they're trying to steal the older cars. So you have to be aware that these type of things are going on right now. There is an agenda to steal the older vehicles, because they're not bringing a lot of the new vehicles over because there is this chip shortage. Okay, so and then the other thing is that they seem to be targeting. Okay, so there's random people getting pulled over for minor reasons, and this is happening in Minneapolis, in South Dakota, and all over the country. Okay, so if you get pulled over for some minor reason and your car gets impounded, you only have 30 days to get the vehicle out. And then after that, the police can consider the vehicle an abandoned vehicle, and they can actually steal the title and everything to your vehicle. Okay, so these are the type of things that they can consider an abandoned vehicle and legally transfer the title and sell it to a dealership or whatever. Okay, so that is the type of thing that is going on. Okay, so there's things like this going on in South Dakota. Okay, there's people getting randomly pulled over and their vehicles are being stolen, and then if they don't have the money to get them out within 30 days, they're being they're being taken from them. So a friend of mine showed me this town in South Dakota called Ridgeview. I don't know if you can see this here. Ridgeview, like the whole town is like a salvage yard. The whole town is like cars piled up all over the whole town. It's called Ridgeview, South Dakota. Okay, it really makes you wonder what is going on there in Ridgeview, South Dakota. Okay, here's another picture. Okay, Ridgeview, South Dakota. The whole town is a salvage yard, like piles and piles of these vehicles, piled up. Are these coming from other states, or are these all people that have been pulled over? And so this is really kind of makes you wonder what's going on in that town. And but one thing I haven't touched on in South Dakota, because it's a very scary situation, there is a huge drug trafficking issue in South Dakota, and I haven't touched on it because it's a very scary situation. And I have a house there, and there is a huge issue in my particular county there, McPherson County in South Dakota, with drug trafficking, and I haven't touched on it. And it's even scary to even go out there because there's so many things going on there that I haven't talked about. But there really is a very serious drug trafficking issue in South Dakota that nobody's talking about. So that is one thing I wanted to touch on tonight. And there was a neighbor of mine that tried to report it because there was all kinds of drug trafficking going on through our neighborhood in the evening. And he was, he'd been living there for a long time, and he tried to report it, and he got murdered. Okay, so this happened. His name was Jimmy Kolb, and he was from Long Lake, South Dakota. It was Jim Kolb, Kolb. And so that happened in 2018. And so I realized at that point how serious the drug issue is there and when he got murdered. And so, and I wanted to show this picture because this picture, I was out taking a walk, and his house was just a couple houses down from mine. And this picture was taken just a couple days before his murder. Okay, so this is quite an interesting picture in South Dakota here. It literally looks like rays were coming up from when the sun was coming up. It looks literally like there's rays coming up from the sun, and it looks like a cross. Okay, so I took a picture of it, and it literally looks like there's a ray of light coming up from the sun. It was something so unusual that I had never seen anything like that. So I tried looking up a Bible verse to try to see, what this might represent. And the one that came up for me, when it talked about rays of light, was Habakkuk 3:4. It says, "His radiance is like the sunlight. He has rays flashing from his hand, and there is the hiding of his power." So this was a really powerful scripture, and I think there's really something very peculiar and interesting going on in South Dakota, and I think there has been for a very long time that nobody's talking about. And I think God is doing some very serious work there right now, because there wouldn't be pictures like this showing up, and if God wasn't, I've had some other pictures too that I'll show on other videos that have shown up, and I'll talk about those. But that makes me very much believe that God is doing something in South Dakota right now. There's some major stuff that has been going on for a long time, and there's no press out there. There's no paper. There's no really valid newspaper that's reporting really truth. There's not a news station that's real legitimate. And so there's a lot of things that have gone under the table for many, many years. And so this is something I have learned since I've had a house out there, really to how much has been swept under the table for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. This is 50 years now, I think. This has gone on where things like murders and drug trafficking and everything have been swept under the table for all these years. And so there's just so I just wanted to touch on this briefly. I believe there are some things that need to come out here. I had no idea. I'm kind of, I bought a house there because I had a friend who sold me a house there, and I got a really good deal on a house there. And so I'm kind of back and forth. But I had no idea that there was all this other corruption going on there, is all I'm saying. There's just a lot of corruption that I wasn't aware of. Okay, so that's all I'm touching on tonight. And but just beware of these car thefts and the food supply and different things like that is what I want to touch on tonight. Okay, God bless.